Stress is the number one killer of people in the Western world. Primarily, things like heart disease are specifically what are the big drivers of death. Chronic stress. Chronic stress is something that should not be happening to people. It is something that should be well under control and relatively easily under control. However, lifestyle kind of contradicts me a little bit on that, doesn't it? So, how does stress influence your body long term, and how does this affect your ability to heal from things like injuries and keep you from being as good of an athlete as you otherwise could be? Now, stress is something that is extraordinarily misunderstood by people. People don't understand what stress is. People don't understand. If we want to talk about mortality, people don't understand what heart disease is. People have this really basically made up notion of heart disease, and it leads to basically just made up ideas about stress and what causes heart disease. When we understand what stress is and have a much more concrete, objective understanding of it, then we can do some things. So, stress is something that should naturally be managed in real time, all the time, by your lifestyle, meaning that your lifestyle itself should promote being not chronically stressed. But this is obviously way different from reality. Everybody is stressed the hell out constantly. Um, like students in university, one of their biggest problems is chronic anxiety. University students, kids in their young 20s, late teens, should not be dealing with anxiety on like a large scale. That just shouldn't be the way. Um, but stress is indeed the number one cause of death long term. But if you understand what that actually means, if you can understand what stress is, what causes it, why it even exists, because people don't understand that stress and your stress response is more appropriate, but it's easier to say stress. Um, it has a biological function. It exists. You have genes that code for your ability to respond to stress and promote the attributes of it. But if we can understand how to manipulate this and manipulate our stress levels, then suddenly we have the power to prevent the root cause of almost all long-term dysfunction so that you can actually have a stronger, more independent life for the rest of your life. What we don't want, guys, is to be living only the first third of our life. Do you know what I mean by that? People are hitting their 30s and basically just degrading from there on. People are getting to 30 years old and complaining of so many autoimmune conditions, like rheumatoid arthritis and other kinds of arthritis, um, and having so much pain, so much accumulation of stress in their joints and their muscles and their brain, and feeling like, I just can't function. I hurt too much. I cannot be an athlete anymore. And so they just spend the rest of their life with their body becoming more and more obese, becoming type 2 diabetic, having high blood pressure, developing heart disease, being incapable of exercising well because it just hurts too dadgum much because they cannot lose weight because who knows what's going on with us. Oh, but all you have to do is eat less and move more. Worst advice ever. And all the people who say that, all they do is clearly demonstrate that they don't have a bloody clue how the human body works, what fitness is meant to be for, how to modulate stress. So we have a state just simply called homeostasis. This technically can refer to a couple of different things, but basically, and colloquially speaking, you have normal attributes of blood pressure, heart rate, body temperature, ventilation, which is your rate of breathing, right? When those things are normal, you're said to be at homeostasis. This typically refers to when you're at rest. Like, let's say you're just simply not doing anything, nothing stressing you out there in the moment. You are at rest, you are at homeostasis. That's what that means. Stress, or a stressor, is anything that brings you away from that. So we could say that when you are lying in bed, let's say you've just woken up and your blood pressure's low, your heart rate's low, relatively speaking, of course, but you're very much at rest, right? When you stand up, all those things go up. So technically, standing up in gravity then becomes a stressor. It does. That is 100% accurate. That's not to say that standing up is bad for you, because stress is neither good nor bad. Exercise is a stressor. Getting into a fight is a stressor. Are they good and bad? It's context dependent. But stress has a purpose. Stress and our stress response, our fight or flight response, has a purpose and it keeps us alive. Short term. Long term, it still keeps us alive, but it either makes us stronger or weaker depending on how well we handle it. So let's talk about fight or flight, because if we understand the fight or flight response, this is an exaggeration of stress. This is taking it to like its peak in an acute kind of way. So short term peak. And I find that this conversation is really easy to have if you take it from the point of view of a fight, because then you can understand the biological purpose of a stress response. Why does it even exist? Why would you have the capacity to have like chronically high blood pressure, chronically high heart rate, etc.? So if we can understand, we have adrenaline. Everyone understands that we have adrenaline. It's our primary stress hormone and it's balanced out by cortisol. And these two are referred to as your stress hormones primarily. How does adrenaline influence your body? When you get into a fight, your body has to be able to receive that fight. If your blood pressure increases during stress to deliver more blood flow more quickly so you get more oxygen and be able to, function athletically, right? Let's say you get into a fight and your blood pressure did not increase. You will not be able to cope as well. The adrenaline helps you to get a higher blood pressure, higher heart rate in order to cope with the fight. That makes sense. It's the exact same thing with exercise. If this doesn't happen, you're not going to be able to exercise well. It can possibly lead to you passing out, possibly. So, what else does adrenaline do? Adrenaline makes you better at fighting. It makes you better at dealing with a stressor. It will give you tunnel vision. It will make you better at honing in on the threat. It will give you also tunnel hearing. That may not be technically the term that's used, but we'll go with it. Where you get selective hearing, you will, exactly the same as tunnel vision, basically be able to hone in on the threat, be able to listen better for lower tone sounds like growling, lower voices, yelling. It shuts down cognition and language. So fight or flight isn't technically the full thing. Many of you will have heard it referred to as fight, flight, or freeze, because we understand when you get into a fight, you will either fight back, you will get scared and run away, or you will get so scared that you literally just shut down and you collapse to the ground and go fetal. Have you ever seen someone do that? It's terrifying in a way, but you literally just huddle up, protect your insides, trying to protect your vital organs, and you're just done. And what happens to people when they go through that is that their cognition has been so impaired, they cannot speak very well. They cannot really moderate their thoughts very well. Thoughts aren't going through that well. So the ability to process like complex language, mathematics, physics, things like that, that goes way out the window. It also turns off your digestion and your immune system because you don't need to be digesting that sandwich or be focused on healing that cut you got the other day. All that stuff will shut down. Have you ever experienced getting so stressed out that your mouth got really dry? Same thing, your salivation, which is the start of your digestive system, will shut down. We already talked about how your blood pressure, your heart rate, your ventilation, your rate of breathing, and your body temperature will go up. That's with the increased metabolism. And a whole host of other things happen with adrenaline. Now, do we understand that this isn't a case of you are relaxed, you are stressed? It is not black and white. It is not, a little switch and you only have those two options. It exists on a spectrum, right? If you are, if you think you're about to get into a fight, you might start, your heart rate's going to be ticking over. You're going to start to feel the effects of this stuff. But that's very different than when it's time to actually fight. Maybe this is an example, it's supposition. But you can understand this idea of it's a spectrum, right? Um, Exercise is another stressor. You experience all of this stuff during exercise, but it's much more controlled, it's much more tame. When you have this stuff going on, let's say that this is homeostasis, and just imagine a line going through here. Exercise takes you here. This is stressed. A fight will take you way out here. This is super stressed. It exists on a spectrum. You can be anywhere through there. The more down the line you are, the more intensely these come on. So another thing that will happen is that how your blood pressure increases, your veins and your lymphatic vessels, they have sympathetic nerves around them. When you become stressed out, they clench, and that increases your blood pressure. The smaller diameter of the vessels, you need more speed to get the same volume of blood to get through there, right? We can understand that these responses are extraordinarily valuable. If you don't have these responses during exercise, you're not going to be able to exercise very well. And if you were exercising and you suddenly went back to homeostasis, you would pass out. But the problem is not that you have a stress response. The problem is the duration of the stress response. Human beings, we are not meant to be constantly under stress, day in and day out. You are meant to dip your toes into it, enough to stimulate the need to adapt, which is what exercise is, and then you get out of it and you get your nervous system back to relaxation. Let's remember, guys, exercise does not make you stronger. It does not. Never has, never will. That's not the point of it. Exercise makes you weaker. You have challenged your body, you have stressed your body in such a way that you have become weaker, and now you rest and you relax away from it for a long enough duration of time that you adapt and you grow stronger. It is in that rest period that you grow stronger. If we can capitalize on strategies for recovering, then we undo the stress, both short term and long term. And this is how we go about this. This is how we go about a proper rehab routine. So, how do we deal with chronic stress? You need to identify that you are stressed. You need to incorporate mobility work, drills that are going to get you back to normal, get you back to that homeostasis and as quickly as possible. And you need to practice becoming more resilient. Resiliency is a big thing. We understand that there's people out there who, even the thought of standing up in front of a crowd and speaking terrifies them and will make them go fetal. Maybe not that far, but maybe some people will do that. Other people can handle it quite well and they can stand in front of a group of people, be just fine. Same stressor, exactly the same, but the individuals handle it differently. The individual in the first example, they need to become more resilient so that they can be a stronger human being. Something else we need to understand is that the deeper down the rabbit hole you are, the longer it takes to crawl out of it. If you've been under a lot of chronic stress for decades, it will take some time. This isn't like you do, one mobility session and then you're just done. This is going to take months to undo, probably. But we need to get the tools and the means to calm your body, calm your nervous system down as much as possible so you can enhance your ability to heal as much as possible. When you are chronically stressed, when you are acutely stressed, like during exercise, your body doesn't heal. It doesn't. Your body does not go through healing responses during exercise. And this is why it's so important to really get our heads around this, guys, is that if we can come out of exercise, then we will heal. If we remain in that nervous system state, that sympathetic nervous system, that stressed nervous system, that fight or flight response, you don't heal. Or at least the healing, because this exists on a spectrum, it's not black and white in this conversation, your healing is extraordinarily slowed down and impaired, right? So if we look at these two men here and the two women on the next slide, both of these men are 84 years old. One of them is ripped. One of them is more ripped than most American 20-year-olds who are incredibly overweight and can't wipe their own ass very well. The other one is bound to a wheelchair and he's probably going to kick it any day now. Same age, and people will just blame genetics. Now, genetics aren't the cause of this. The biggest thing that genetics will have here is how much muscle can he actually put on? Because I reckon that guy on the left, he's probably about as bulky as he can get, because dear Lord. And I would honestly believe that he was natural. If you go about training well, even at that age, absolutely 100% natural. He may not be. But this is what we mean. If you have a lifestyle where you are constantly healing and capitalizing on recovering well, your body just remains athletic. People think that statement, people hate hearing that. Think about any other animal in existence. What animal gets to 1/3 of the way through their lifespan and then they're basically done with being an athlete, with being a human being, or with being whatever animal they are? Imagine a lion. Lions, at the top of my head, I believe they typically live in the wild to about 10 to 12 years old. Is that right? I'm pretty sure that's right. Imagine, doesn't matter, just for the sake of example, imagine that they get to the age of 3 and then their body becomes so rife with arthritis, with obesity, type 2 diabetes, and chronically high blood pressure and cancer. We don't actually see that. It's the exact opposite, but imagine that was the case. They hit 3 years old and then they're just done. It's just slowly waiting until they die for the next 2/3 of their life. That'd be ridiculous. They would go extinct. Human beings, as we are now in the Western world, we would go extinct out in the wild pretty quickly. We wouldn't, because we would have proper nutrition, possibly, probably, if we had, bison we could hunt. So how do we deal with chronic stress? Here's another example. That woman, I don't remember her name. She actually is a bodybuilder at that age. I remember seeing a podcast with her some years back. Anyways, if anyone knows, comment below and we can post her. Maybe we can get her on here for a chat. Both of these women are 74 years old. Exactly the same thing as in the previous slide. Your choice. And it is your choice when you know how to deal with stress and know how to deal with your body, know how to maintain your body. So, how do we deal with chronic stress? Easily, but with work, with consistent work. Nervous system regulation, we've talked a lot about that because that's what adrenaline does. It dysregulates your nervous system when it's chronic. And we do this via combination, whole lot of things that we do with this. But sleep, getting sleep under control and capitalizing on sleep, breath work, ice and heat exposure, meditation, which kind of goes along with breath work as well. There's a whole bunch of things we can do for nervous system regulation. Working on lymphatics, this means taking care of your circulation. But that's one of the easiest, most powerful things you can do to take care of your health. Um, for example, I've done a whole lot of mobility work through my 20s. I'm 33 now at the recording of this video, and I had to do a lot of mobility work, a lot of um, foam rolling, a lot of banded distractions, a lot of contract relax PNF, proprioceptive work, a lot of strength training in order to get my body back to normal because I was so wrecked in my late teens and early 20s from athletic injuries that my body was just miserable. It's in chronic pain, my knees, my hips, lower back, everything was just wrecked. I've gotten through that. Nowadays, I really just do lymphatic work, meaning I massage out my lymph node zones, and that's about all. That's what I do for a warm up. And clients as well, once they get on top of that, it's like, hey, my body just kind of works. I just maintain full range of motion. I don't have swelling anymore. I don't have chronic pain anymore. Cool. All this other stuff, it helps you to get to that point. Nutrition, guys, we got to get on top of nutrition. We need to be getting in enough protein and fat of the animal variety um, so that our bodies are not chronically inflamed. The biggest thing with nutrition is that people need to be willing to experiment on themselves. Stop being so addicted to dopamine, stop being so addicted to sugar. Cut out everything except for what you actually need to eat for a couple of months. Make sure you budget out for it, figure out what you actually need, and then start incorporating things. Do a carnivore elimination diet, 3 months, and then start incorporating things in. For example, I found out that I am perfectly fine with things like pickles and sauerkraut. They don't hurt me at all. I can eat a fair amount, relatively a lot of that stuff, and it will not bother my bowels at all. It will not give me any joint pain like Indian food does now. It will not bother my sleep. My athletic performance for the next 3 days will still be on the uppity. So it doesn't impact me. Whereas when I do have a lot of spices and herbs, which I do not enjoy anymore, I will have joint pain. My bowels will be wrecked for the next couple of days. My athletic performance, I'll still be able to exercise, but it will not feel good. It's little things like that we want to monitor. So what can we do to promote that kind of thing? What can we do to promote, hey, my digestion feels great all the time. My sleep feels great all the time. My exercise feels great all the time. I just feel good. My joints feel good. If I'm eating something that contradicts that, I don't want that in my life. I don't want that in my life. Why would I want to be regularly consuming foods which leaves me feeling suboptimal? I want to always be feeling my best. And so we use these different factors of mobility, of nervous system regulation, so that you chronically feel amazing all the time. That sounds like a win to me. That sounds much better than the alternative of feeling like I'm just falling apart and degrading over time. Then we need to be doing appropriate strength training, and we need to have the right mobility tools to be able to, manage our range of motion, manage our pain, manage our strength. So, content coming up is going through all of this stuff. How do we actually make this happen? And that's coming up soon. So, if you guys have any questions on the content going through this video, please let me know. Otherwise, that is it for today. And next up, we're going to start going through all 5 of these topics in as much detail and variety as we possibly can. Take care, guys.